Okay, welcome to the Stellify podcast, and I've got my good mate Lawrence back. Third one, Lawrence. Third one in a year,
Well,
so this is
third time lucky. But yeah, so the last one got took off, and then I don't know why they took it down and put it back on. It's amazing, isn't it? When there's millions of YouTubes and others being put out every day, and they've got somebody checking it. Well, it can't be individuals in a back room saying, right, you play that about one of Ant's. Play that Stellify back, and if he says anything about the V, ban him, because it's got to be AI checking everything, hasn't it? This is how sophisticated it is. And I was, and I was looking at something the other day. What was it? I forget what it was, and it was on my Facebook channel 30 seconds later with loads of ads for it. And this is how it works. They spy on everything we say and everything we do, and it's getting worse.
Yeah, it was a strange one when they knocked our chat off, because obviously we did it live, and then as soon as it's like, I think it was a day after, it just knocked off. Didn't say why, and then I got a medical misinformation kind of slap on the wrist. But then I think it was a week later, they just brought it back. They didn't say why. They removed any kind of strike or warning that they'd given me, and it's never been altered.
They want this stuff out there, but when they want it out, that's basically what it is. Because there's going to be a general leak of all the truth. It's going to be generally leaked, but they want to sort of, trickle it through rather than have a big deluge of it. Because this is what's happening, and you see what's happening with everybody's getting screwed left, right, and centre, aren't they? The price of everything is just. It's rocketing. I mean, I post stuff from my little business, and an item that was 96p just before COVID, £3.15 now. So you can't make any bloody money. It's just, so I'm thinking of shutting it all down. I'm just going to wind it down because it's, and then you've got eBay taking 20% of all your sales. So you've lost half your money between eBay and the postage. Just a waste of time. So they're trying to screw the small businesses to try and get you on this universal whatever it is, but I'm retired, so it don't bother me. But a lot of people are not retired, so they're starting to go out to work, and bloody horrible world, isn't it, at the moment? Well, we've been screwed left, right, and centre.
It's funny you say that, because I'm usually quite a positive guy, but these past couple of weeks I felt a dip. And it's down to money. It's down to money pressures, that we financially we're having a bit of a struggle. And it is obviously everyone, not everybody, but a lot of people are tight at the moment, aren't they? And it is frustrating, but we're just going to keep going, Lawrence.
I'm sort of lucky because I've got this state pension. Not that it's a lot of money, but it's enough. And the missus works part-time. We haven't got a mortgage, so we're all right, So I've got a relative life of leisure for most people. The hardest thing I've got to do is get up in the morning and take the dog for a walk, around the countryside, and study stuff, and and try and figure out what's going on. And that's how it is. But some people are having to go out and do a work for somebody for 40 hours a week. God, I couldn't do it now. I just think, sod it. It's just too much, isn't it? And most of the people I know are self-employed anyway in some shape or form. And generally speaking, the universe looks after people, in our sort of neck of the woods. It finds a way of, making sure that at least you get by and you're not starving, and you can put food on the table and look after your pets and all that sort of stuff. It's a battle for most people, isn't it? I mean, all this. It's just a relentless. People are just they're just living so they can go to work, or going to work so they can actually afford to just survive. Which isn't how it's meant to be.
Speaking of what's going on in the world, then, Lawrence, you're going to talk about the Book of Revelations today, aren't you? And how this ties in with everything that's going on. So I don't know where you want to start, because it's a big book.
Well, let's have a look. I'll turn one of my pages. Let me have a look. I was looking at one in particular the other day, but where's it gone? I've been looking at this for hours prior to this meeting, but I make loads of notes, but then I don't refer. I've got them all written down here, actually. Yeah, well, here's one for you. So you think about Israel, yeah?
Yeah.
Israel. Well, you could fit 50 Israels in the United States, but it has such a big significance in the world of stuff, and you probably think, well, why is that? Yeah, why is it? You know, and there is a reason for it. That's in the book of Revelation, where it talks about Armageddon. And you've heard of Armageddon. People think, well, it's a war, isn't it? Yeah, but they don't realize what the war is. Well, the war at Armageddon is in Israel, believe it or not. Yeah, I wrote. Where's my notes go? Here we go. Instructions. Let's have a look. Armageddon. So the name Armageddon, yeah, mentioned in the New Testament, derives from Har Megiddo, meaning the hill of Megiddo in Hebrew. And today, Megiddo is an important junction on the main road connecting the center of Israel with Lower Galilee. Right. But the thing is, the thing that's in Israel that's of interest is when Christ was crucified and he went back home to the pleroma, he punched a hole, spiritually speaking, in the cosmic egg that we're in, and that was in a place called Golgotha in Jerusalem, of all places. And Israel is where the Antichrist is going to set up his headquarters, because he wants to stop people escaping. Now, how they would do that, because physically you're not going to escape, but that's apparently where they're setting up the headquarters, when they come in. So basically all the world rulers are going to hand over all their power to the Antichrist, and then he'll appoint all these so-called fabulous people giving us free energy and stuff like that. But he's going to rule. It's going to be a ruthless dictatorship, and that the bit where men, they could not die and they were chewing at their tongues because they were in such agony. That's what this dictatorship is going to make life misery, and we're heading for what's you've seen the Hunger Games movie, haven't you? You must have seen it. Most people have. Yeah, that's what we're heading towards, because they're going to be wanting to hunt us down, the real humans, the 1% that we are. They want to hunt us down and take us with them into this new 5D, which is the second death. Once you're there, you're never going to get out. Because this, where we are now, this is finished. This is being taken down. Let me tell you where it says about where it's being taken down, so you'll know. There we go. It's in Revelation 16. Yeah, here we go. So let's have a look. Revelation 16, 16:8, and it says, "Then the fourth angel poured out his bowl upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and they blasphemed the name of God, who has power over these plagues, and they did not repent to give him glory." So this is very about the sun, yeah, and it's going to start causing problems to the world, because the place is going to start overheating before too long, and this is what's going to cause the droughts and the famines, and we're already getting weird weather at the moment, and of course another effect of it is it's going to melt both the polar ice caps. What's going to happen then? Well, when the ice caps happens, the Antichrist is going to open the gates, and let out all the frigging demons loose on us, And the guardians apparently of the entrances to these, it's like the Hollow Earth, which is they're hidden from by the ice and stuff at the moment. These are the scorpion men. You see all these creatures that are half men, half goat, half horse. Well, these are men who are half men and half scorpions, and there's others. There's all sorts going on. Anyway, they're going to get let loose upon us, and when they start taking away the keys of creation to take this matrix down, then it's going to expose all that is hidden. So the stuff that's, in 4D, in the etheric realm and the astral realm, this is all going to become visible to us. But the first thing that becomes visible is the area, the lower area, the negative area, where all the negative forces are. And we'll think that these are the evil aliens. And then after that, the higher, the beautiful, so-called beautiful people, we'll perceive them as the saviours who are going to get us out of here. The gullible will anyway. But there's going to be a war between these, the negative and the positive forces, and it's going to be in the area, of Golgotha, Armageddon, and people will take sides to either the negative or the positive forces. So the good people who are gullible will go with the positive forces, and your bad people, the people in control at the moment, they'll probably side with the negative forces because they are controlled. They're not spiritually controlled. It's their consciousness is controlled. Every politician, their minds have been taken over by the dark forces, and that's why we get all this shit. And they all go along with evil plans, and and then you read in the book of Revelation about the mark of the beast. Nobody can buy and sell without the mark of the beast. Well, we can see that's happening now, because if you want to buy something now online, you can't really pay by cash, can you? You can pay by card at the moment. Yeah. Well, what's that going to be? It's just a stepping stone into the mark of the beast. You can't buy and sell. And you've got shops, there's some shops are card only. They won't take cash. So it's all a stepping stone. They don't do it all in one go because, it would cause chaos. So they do it over a period of time. And then they say, oh, right, well, as of such and such a day, there's no cash. It's just going to be this. And then after that, we'll get everybody on universal, because we won't get any jobs. All the jobs will go. And so we'll be dependent on them, for food and money and everything else. That's the big problem. So if you can't buy and sell, where'd you get your shopping? How much food? If you're watching this, have you got a stash of 6 months' food put away? What have you got? If there's no food, you're going to die, aren't you? Everybody. I started doing all this. I've given a lot of it away because when the thingy kicked off, the old the arm shot thing and all that sort of stuff. I started buying 25 kilograms of several. I bought about 200 kilograms of dried food. Got it stashed away, and I've still got some of it, and it's all right. Some of the dried stuff just keeps. But some of the other stuff I bought in cans have gone rusty, so I've had to get rid of them, So cans aren't really much good. The dried food's fine. You could probably keep that a good while. But, it's going to come the day where, we're going to have to run for it, and do the best you can. Because that where it says in the book of Revelation, it said, all the kings and the rulers, they headed for the mountains to hide, including the good men. I'm presumably that's to hide from the hailstones that weigh 100 kilos that are going to start raining down on us. Because all this shit's going to happen, and it's going to wipe out huge swathes of the population, probably in our lifetimes. This is the lull before the storm. It's chill out a bit while you can, because the shit has yet to hit the fan.
Just to take you back a bit, you mentioned where Christ punched a hole. Is that the escape route, if you like, for souls to get back to the pleroma? Is that what that is?
Well, what did Christ say? He said, he said to follow him, and that is a literal thing. So if you were to die before the apocalypse, before it all comes to an end, then you'll find yourself in the same sort of body that you've got now. It'll be 100 times lighter, but it'll have the same shape and form, and it'll be a bit more elastic. And you'll have the same mental function for 40 days, but you're not subject to the rigors of time and space, and you can go anywhere by thought to any time. And so the notion is that, if you're not alive at that time, what you want to do is tell yourself in your mind to go to where Christ was crucified, yeah, and gather around there. And apparently there's thousands of people all there waiting for him for the big day where he's going to take us out to not back to the pleroma. He's going to take us to it's like a holding place, an intermediate place where we, that's the 1,000 years that they talk about in Revelation, where they say the devil gets locked up in the pit of hell for a year, then they let him loose again. So that's not the true God, because he would never let the devil loose, would he? He'd never let him loose again. But that's where we go. Now, if we're lucky enough to get out this time, that's where we go. We go to, it says, my Father has many mansions. Well, it's a place on the boundaries of the matrix where the evil entities can't get at us. And what we do there, obviously, we get spiritually, our souls get cleansed, because our souls are full of shite and stuff like that at the moment, and somewhat corrupted. The soul needs to be cleansed before we can get out of here. So that, and apparently the hole was punched in Golgotha, which is in Armageddon. They're all right in around about the same place, and that's why Israel has such importance. And there's probably portals all over the world. It makes you wonder whether they've got portals in Iraq as well, because that was a sort of a place that there seems to be a lot of, Iraq and Syria are places like, why is there all this trouble over there? What's the importance of being in charge there? There's probably something, big that they don't want us to know about.
Yeah. Well, where was Mesopotamia and Babylon and places like that? Were they in similar
Babylon's
areas?
Earth. When it talks about the harlot of the earth, harlot of Babylon, it's talking about the earth, because the earth is this prison that we're in, where all the debauchery goes on. So they said to Jesus, Jesus said it's not the spirit that sins, it's the bodies that we've been given by the demiurge. They're programmed for sin. And that's the problem. And we are programmed to the pleasures that the bodies have and the attachments that they have to your friends, to your family, to the pleasures of life. And that's what apparently stops you getting out, because you're going to want to come back here. The problem is, this time is the big one. So the regular reincarnation is probably not going to bring people back here. They're going to be taking you to this awful 5D world, and you won't get a body like the one you've got now. You're going to get a body like the Greys. You've seen the Greys, haven't you? With the big almond eyes, the little necks, and scrawny bodies with no belly button and no sexual organs, because they can't reproduce. That's what you're going to end up as. You're going to end up reincarnated into that. But you'll, because that's all you'll know, because they've wiped your memory again, you'll think that's the norm. That's the fate for most people who don't get out. They're called the J-Rods, and that's the J-Rods are the ones that came back at Roswell. They came back because they can travel through time. They've got the keys to travel through time, and they came back here trying to change their future, but they couldn't. They can only change the future where they are, which is in the parallel universes. So you've got two mirrors. As you've got two mirrors, you've got the positive universe and the negative universe, which is what you get, positive and negative with everything. And then you've got the reflections in the mirror, which are all these parallel universes, which contain the energies from the thoughts of humans that haven't materialized into anything. But the energy's still there. And that's what's going to be used to power this 5D reality that the New Ages are so keen on. But it's a fate worse than it's the second death. That's what's coming up, and that's why you get, you've got all these galactic council of this, that, and the other on Facebook. I mean, I'm on it just to see what they're saying, and some people can see through it, but a lot of the posts, it's the New Ages which was put in there deliberately to mop up people for what's coming.
Yeah, it's all trickery, though, isn't it? That's the thing. I've spoken about this quite a few times, where it allows for spiritual bypassing as well. So because the New Age thing is just like love and light, isn't it? And just keep vibing high and everything will be fine, guys. You know what I mean? Just keep your vibration high. And it doesn't allow for actual work, does it, of self and accepting the shadow self as well.
I think
So
if you're meant to get out of it, if you're meant to get out, you're going to get out. That's how I see it. You know, and are they judging you? I don't know. You know, because Christ says, "I judge." Christ said he didn't judge the flesh. He says, because he knows the flesh isn't who we are. These are just dolls. You know, it's like the greys are like dolls. They, and some of them can actually move out of them. And, humans can move out of these. I haven't. Well, maybe we do it in our dreams, but these are just dolls that we're in. We are spiritual beings trapped in these meat suits that rot and decay over time, and that's the problem, isn't it? We weren't meant to. The original creation of the man, there was no death, but they brought death in, didn't they? Death and decay. This is what this world is. It's a horrible world.
Yeah. So the death and decay comes from the copy, really, doesn't it? The demiurge's copy, really, of the real Earth that we were meant to be on. Is that right?
Well, the unsplit humans, which had a face on both sides and 4 arms, 4 legs, or whatever, they were immortal. We were immortal, but we were split, which is shown in the thing about Zeus splitting the humans in two, because we were too bright. We were far more intelligent and radiant and powerful but we were children than the so-called gods, the Archons of this world. They could see we were far, and they would never be able to control us because we were far. They were flawed beings because they were derived from the demiurge, who was a flawed. He was an abortion from Sophia. He was an abortion which she breathed life into. He's imperfect, so it was always going to be an imperfect creation. But we were perfect. We came here to help. But when we turned up and they could see us, they could see us through the waters, the bright shining lights that we were, and they could feel the energy that we had. They weren't going to allow it. They wanted to control this matrix, and they would never be able to control us. So they split us. So that's why everybody on this earth who's a divine spark is carrying the masculine spirit. The feminine spirit is on the boundaries, which is shown by the Penelope story in Odyssey. If you watch Odyssey in Greek mythology, Penelope is waiting for her man to return, and we are the men. They're waiting for us to return, and we will get reunited at some point. But most of us, if we get to the holding zone and escape here, it'll be 1,000 years before we get out. Those people that manage to reunite with their higher self, their Eve, their I am presence, then they'll be able to get out straight away because they've already, fulfilled. They've found out who they are and they've reunited with their other half. But we haven't, and there's not going to be many who do, because it's because everything's against us from birth, isn't it? We're sent down with the education and the programming and everything else. It's like when you're little, you can have your little friend who's real. You can see it, and you just think it's children being, creative or whatever. But we don't automatically get fully dumbed down when we're born. We're carrying some of the light, a lot more of the light with us, until we eventually conform and dumb down to what society tells us we have to do. And you probably did that yourself, because when I was a kid, they'd take me to children's parties. I wouldn't join in. I'd just stand at the side and observe. I felt, I don't know what I was thinking, but I knew I shouldn't have been there. And you probably did the same yourself. We were outcasts because 99 out of 100 people, they're not like you and me. These these are the NPC characters, are all the the ones that have the soul, but they've got no spark. Most people are carrying no spirit apart from the bit that they've got from the Sophia, the Sophia soul. So that's why you get bless him, you get Daz telling you we are the 99%. We're not. We're the bloody 1%. If we were the 99%, all this would end tomorrow, and you wouldn't have this evil earth. It would all change. But we're not. We're the 1%, and we can never win. Because and they everybody in power is not. There's no divine sparks in places of power. If by some chance that they do, they get taken out. They have a heart attack on the mountain or something. They get taken out. So all your politicians, they may have souls, that have been corrupted, and they've sold their soul literally because it's been taken over, and they've got conscious possession or soul possession.
Yeah.
But they're not in charge of what they're doing. Their minds have been taken over by the dark forces, and so it's a rigged game, and we can't win. The whole politics of everything, the Tories, the Labour, and now they're talking about whoever this new party is with what's his name, the Reform Party. Ain't going to make any difference. They're all part of it, and if they get into power, they're just going to be just as bad as the rest of them.
Of course they are.
I'm going to vote for the Reform Party. No, people are because they think it's going to make a difference.
It's part of the trickery, though, isn't it? And the distraction. So everything's a distraction to stop you finding your true self. Everything's just distraction. And it's quite funny that I had this conversation today, actually. I said, there's no way on earth. I always fancied myself as a bit of a politician because I wanted to help people. I thought I could make a difference. Yeah. There's no way on earth I would ever have been allowed to be in politics. They would never allow someone like me who's not going to sell the soul out. I was never going to be a politician.
Well, I know, and even those that appear to do good in politics, they've got something over them. So nobody goes into politics unless they've got skeletons in the cupboard, which can be used.
That's right. Yeah.
There was this old video from the '60s. This guy told them, this is how they do it. This is how they make sure that they always get what they want.
Yeah.
And if they don't do as they're told, in the old days, it'd be in the news of the world, and
that's right, yeah.
With whatever, and then they're out of job because they weren't towing the line in the Parliament. So the whole thing's corrupt, and it's like all your judges and all that. There's never going to be any justice in this world because they're all evil as well.
Even if you're not towing the line, even if you are towing the line, they'll have a point where they're ready to get rid of you. You've done your job, so they'll do something. It's like Starmer now. They're already looking like they're creating something for removal of his position because I'm not going to go into it on YouTube, but it's all over Twitter at the moment, and you can see it building where potentially they're going to have him removed. They'll have some kind of humiliation ritual played out for him, and then they'll just move him away and bring somebody else in to carry on his role, which they always do, don't they?
Yeah, I mean they're all in the same boat, whether they appear to be good or not. And we know that they're working towards this brutal dictatorship. That's step by step. It's incremental, but it's all getting there. And we know we've got all these guys, 20 to 30-year-olds or fighting age. Where I'm from in Stockport, they've taken over the Belgrade Hotel, which was the best hotel in the town. It's all full of these so-called illegal immigrants, but they're all fighting age men, and they didn't come over with their wives and children. So they're not refugees. They're not asylum seekers. They're here to fulfill a purpose. But because we're the 1%, we can't tell people what's really going on, but we all know what's going on, and they're, people who've got property, they're saying, right, we'll give you 5 years full rent. The guy around the corner from here, where I am, this guy's got all these flats, and they offered him, all his rent, they were offering him £50 a night for all of them, 365 days a year. And he said, who are you going to be putting in these? Well, these weren't these weren't going to be the illegal immigrants or whatever. These were going to be the criminals who've just been let out of prison. And they said, you're going to have to manage it. So he said, well, no, thanks. But that's what they're doing. They're taking, I mean, this all over Europe and Ireland and Britain, all these hotels where they've got their own security and it's all fighting age men. Because what's going to happen? They're going to bring out stupid rules, horrible stuff that they're making us to go along with. And if we don't, they're going to have these people enforcing it because our own people are not going to do these things to their own people. It's going to be a step too far. Although some of the police, you know, when the thingy cat kicked off with all the book, you can't go out and you have to wear a mask and all this bollocks. I think that a lot of them are, you know, spiritually devoid, to put it
without doubt.
They don't take intelligent people into the police force. Anybody who's intelligent is going to be somebody who's intelligent but who's corruptible, so they'll go along with the agenda and carry out all these, you know, turn a blind eye to all these black operations which we know go on, you know, all these so-called terrorist attacks when we know the terrorists are our own government. It's absurd, you know.
I know. Going back to the 666 moment, and you know the sort of like the not be able to buy anything, not be able to trade, not be able to buy or sell. So I mean, we're seeing this creeping in quite considerably, like you were saying. You know, cash. They don't need to actually say there's no cash because the generations are going to be so used to using digital currencies that they won't need to, will they?
So we've already had, you know, in Revelation 18, and it said, and the nations of the world were deceived by sorcery. Well, we know that was that they gave people, you know, billions of people. And we don't know what was in that, whether there's any material which could if you could put nano into something, could that not self-assemble itself into some kind of device, so to speak, you know, an actual control device, and all the chemtrails. We don't know what's in that, but the people say there's nano in it. You know, I did my presentation at New Horizons 15 years ago, and we did this red wine test, and you won't believe what was coming out when people did that. You could go and watch it. It's all still on there. There's not many people seeing it, but yeah, we had the whole audience doing the red wine test to see what was coming out in their spit. But if that's not the mark of the beast, and we don't know that it's not, if it's not, then they're going to have another major world event and use that as an excuse that people are going to have this biochip, aren't they? Because the biochip is what's associated with the mark of the beast. Yeah.
Does Revelation?
It's not going to be one that's worn on the body. It's going to be one that's, you know, literally carved into the wrist or the forehead. Right.
Does Revelations hint at what potential event is likely to happen?
In what sense? Expand.
Well, you mentioned that another event would have to happen to have this mark. Does it hint at any kind of event? What kind of event we could expect?
Well, whatever it is going to be contrived, but it's going to have to be believable by the masses. And we know that they believe any shit. So yeah, no, it doesn't say what it is. They're gonna believe whatever the shit is. And if it means that they can get their shopping, you know. So you and I know we're not going to. If you take that biochip, you're fucked forever. Yeah, and you're not staying. You know, you're going to the second death. You know, you may as well be dead if you take it. So you just have to take your chances. You know, and usually the universe will. You know, there are hidden forces helping us. I know they are because they help me. There are hidden forces helping us in these times, but you've got to do something yourself as well. You can't just rely on some external saviors who are going to make things work out for you. But yeah, so yeah, if the day comes where that you need a biochip to be able to go shopping and buy food, then you need to be looking at, well, what provision have you made? Have you got any land? Are you growing anything? What have you got stashed away? And how long is it going to be for? You might only need, if you've got 6 months food, then it gives you time to make some plans to do something else, doesn't it? But if you've got nothing, then you're going to be struggling. And we've already seen it now. They're doing all these dummy cyber attacks. So at the local co-op the other day, there was no fruit and veg, nothing. All the shops were empty, and they said it was a cyber attack. Well, we know that's right, bollocks. Yeah. It's bollocks. They thought there was nothing in the shops. You couldn't get anything. And they'll be doing it again, and then they'll be doing. I mean, the worst thing that they can do, and they will do it before long, is they'll take down the internet. Yeah, they'll take down social media, and people will really panic then because they are reliant on it. Well, we are to a certain extent. But they will do it, and it will cause mass panic. People start panicking if they've left the house without their cell phone, don't they? They have to go home and get it because somebody might be sending them a message.
Yeah, and it makes sense that they would head towards a digital voucher currency. Rather, it's because it's a voucher. Really, it's something that's programmable, and with universal basic income, like you're saying, if all the jobs are going to go because of, let's say, AI. Is moving forward so quickly, and a lot of firms will start just introducing AI systems to replace human beings. Then there's going to be no work, is there? So
we know somebody who works in healthcare, so to speak. Healthcare services, and now AI is writing all their reports. That part of their job's just gone. And AI, once they get, they know how to do it. Here's another one for you. Revelation 16:12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial over the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up. So the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. Well, what's going to cause the things to dry up? But when the sun starts intensifying, and there's going to be no water. So you need a good water supply wherever you are. Check out where the local water, the streams or whatever, and get yourself some filters. And then you've got the kings of the east, well, Shambhala, which is like the underground headquarters, in the inner world, that's under the Gobi Desert, Tartaria and stuff. That's all under the Gobi Desert, apparently. There's all this Tartaria stuff about the mud flood and what have you, but apparently it's a subterranean place. So so the global dictatorship that is being planned right this moment will soon be complete and shall become unbearable with its laws. Behind it, dark powers are hiding, which will soon be represented by the Antichrist. He will come bearing the mask of the Redeemer in order to rectify the world. But until then, the current governors of the thing are going to be, manipulated to bring all this about. So
do you think it's going to be quite obvious and clear to the 1%, if you like, the divine sparks, who the Antichrist is, or do you think it's going to be very tricky?
It's a lot. Well, basically, that there is something external happening to wake people up. Because if you look at where I was when I was about 40, I was caught up in mainstream everything. I used to watch the BBC in Question Time and thought the BBC was a sacrosanct organisation. I believed all the crap that was out there. I used to sit down religiously and watch Question. I used to read the broadsheet newspapers, and thought I was knowledgeable. But they say the older you get, the more you realise how much you don't know. But it was so something happens in your life. It could be something quite simple, which will trigger a path where you become more enlightened and you see through all the deception. And a lot of people have gone that. They've gone so far, but they're not going to the, you know, they can't conceive that time can end, but it can. You know, it's like in the book of Revelation, it's saying at the start, it's saying, "I am the Alpha and the Omega." And so this is supposedly the God speaking to John in the book of Revelation. Well, the true Creator of all has no beginning and no end. He's always been there. So that is obviously you're talking about the demiurge.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Or Lucifer, you know, and it says, "I am the morning star." You know, so we know the morning star is the light bringer, is Lucifer. It's not, you know, somebody from the pleroma. So you know, there are errors in all these Revelation stuff, but the general plot's there, you know, and you can read through it and you can think, yeah, that's happened, this is happening, and it's all going to be about manipulating people into a position where they're going to select to go, because everything at the moment is geared for this 5D world. This is where they're trying to take people, because without us, yeah, they've got no power. There's some residual power there from the thoughts of men over millennia, but they need some divine sparks to power this 5D reality. It's the snake that's had its head cut off and it's still vibrating a little, but ultimately it'll stop wiggling, and it'll no longer be. So it's a fate worse than death, and that's where they're going. And this is what all the, you know, why on earth have they got all these underground caverns all over the world? This is for the climatic changes that are happening when you're getting, you know, 100-pound blocks of ice dropping from the sky and everything drying up and there's no food. This is where all your taxation money's going. Yeah, it's to provide all these underground cities that we've never seen, but we've, you know, heard reports of them, seen bits of it, because that is their first stage. You know, this is what CERN's about. They spent billions on CERN. Now, what they're hoping to do there at CERN is to create a portal to take all these people, the few that they're going to take, the few million they're going to be taken to the parallel reality, because you can't take 500 million people on a bus, can you? You know, they're trying to take them down using CERN. Failing that, they've got these, you know, plans for these enormous spaceships where, you know, how that works, I don't know, but their money's been spent upon it. That's what's happening. So everything's been geared up for that. So initially, yeah, everybody, we've got all the climatic changes at the moment. We're all seeing it all going on: the freak weather, the floods, the droughts, all that's happening. And then we've got the financial crisis, the financial collapse of all systems, which is going on now. Everybody's getting impoverished. You know, people can't, you know, yeah, people on old age pensions now having to pay tax on it, which has never been the case because they haven't increased the threshold for income tax. So everybody's been impoverished, and they ultimately they'll be dependent on the state, who can then dictate to them that, you know, if you want to continue getting your monthly payment, your credits, you're going to have this biochip. And everybody's going to take it nearly, aren't they? Because what's the choice? You know, if they've not made any provision, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah,
that's where it's all going.
Yeah, you can see that plan.
Yeah, and of course, of course, most of the population has to be wiped out anyway. So we know we've got all this nano stuff that's been in the what's it, and in what's coming down from the sky, which can then reassemble in people's bodies. You know, there could well be a kill switch there. You know, so at the moment, people are being wiped out at a much greater rate. And the other thing is the fertility. Yeah, the birth rate now is at an all-time low. People can't get pregnant because they took the what's it. You know, I mean, what that does. I mean, they've been doing that anyway. But that's how it is, and it's all being geared up. And of course, you've got your royal families, you know, and all these other people, your pop stars, they've all gone to David Bowie Island, wherever it is, you know. And these pop stars, you know, the so-called ones that died at 27, they didn't die. They're actors. They just take on another role. It's like Amy Winehouse. Well, she just became Lady Gaga. You know, if you look at the pictures, they're identical. But people say, "Oh, don't be so ridiculous." This is what goes on. You know, it's like Freddie Mercury. You know, he didn't die of AIDS. He was just an actor. And you know, I think he took a job in America. I've lost the story on all that, but you can look at the guy. You know, faces. You know, might have had a bit of plastic surgery, but he's obviously the same guy. And a lot of them, you know, they're all reinvented as other people. Same as, you know, Bill Hicks became Alex Jones. You know, you look at that picture of Bill Hicks when he was at Waco. Yeah, it was like an intermediary version. You know, if you take a face and then you slowly turn it into another one. Well, this was the in-between place between Bill Hicks and Alex Jones, and he was an actor. You know, he is an actor. This is what goes on. You know, all the world's a stage, and we all fulfill many roles, even ourselves. Because you know, if you look at who you were 10 years ago, and you look at yourself now, you're a totally different person, aren't you? You know, you're totally different to who you were, and you've took on another role. You've become somebody else. You know, whereas these people, you know, they keep the same body, but they just take on a different name and do something else.
Does it state anything in Revelations about the trans sort of the transsexual kind of move? Because obviously that's a massive kind of, you know, that's a big push over the past few years, isn't it, in terms of an event, an agenda? But obviously, you know, we've discussed that off camera before. This has been going on for many years, but now it's becoming quite obvious, isn't it, that it's really pushed on the children. Is that in Revelations?
It's in the Bible, you know, about you know, saying, you mentioned dress up in women's clothing and stuff like that. I can't think of anything on the top off the top. It's like an abomination. But basically, what these people are doing, they're trying to go back to the humans as they were, where we were androgynous, you know, and the way it's a perverted way of doing it. And so, you know, they have various ways of doing it. You know, some of it's done in the womb. Sometimes it's done with surgery and hormones, and it's what all the Swiss finishing schools were for. It's where all the men went to learn how to walk like women for deportment, because real women don't need deportment, do they? Know how to behave like a woman. But you know, if somebody said to you, "Well, you've got to," you know, from a small age, this is how it is. You know, you're going to have to be a girl for you. You have to put on a dress. I mean, these kids must be totally fucked up. You know, having to wear dresses or become boys for their entire life. And all the pop stars do it. You look at Sting and his children, and you look at the guy in Pink Floyd and his daughter. You look at all of them; they're all bringing up their children as the opposite sex to what they were born, and they do it, you know, because their minds are taken over. And all these great songs that they write, that wasn't some natural inherent ability that they had. Their minds were taken over, and same as the Beatles. They didn't bloody write them. You know, they weren't organically written by individuals. They were given all the musical skills. All the best guitarists in the world are women. You know, women's hands are finer than men, and you've got a guitar to play. You've got great big chunks of meat as fingers. You're not going to be that good at playing the guitar compared to somebody who's got very fine fingers. But people, you know, you go and tell people that they're fake. You go and tell people that their football club are all girls, and they'll laugh at you, won't they? But it's true. You know, I mean, what's her name? Kelly. She's really into it now. She had the Mr. E on the other day.
I watched it. Yeah, I watched it
the other day. You know, and it's like all your royal families, they're all inverted. A whole lot of them. Whole of Holly. I can't really watch movies because I can see through it. You know, when you even the They Live, the people in that, the guy who played the big hero in that, and he says, "I come here to chew bubblegum," or whatever. he was inverted as well. So it's all of them, and all your politicians, they're all all the main ones, at least, they're all inverted. You know, and the rest are perverts, so they can be controlled. But the leaders are all inverts. It's like that woman from New Zealand. You know, Mr. E did a song about it where, she was walking down the corridor and you'd see her testicles swinging
around. I know.
He started playing this song on his guitar, saying "them balls, them balls, them balls." You know, and you think, well, yeah, right. And people say, "Oh, but some women do have broad shoulders," you know. But you look at all the markers, and it's obvious. So, you know, I mean, I'll watch a drama and try and forget that what I'm watching are people pretend they're acting twice. They're pretending to be the opposite sex, and then they're pretending to be the character in the movie that they're in. But yeah, they're trying to normalise it, and that's why they brought all these stupid rules where, you know, you go into a hospital, they'll say to you, Ant, and you're going in for something, and say, "I hope you don't mind asking me to me, but are you pregnant?" This is what you have to do, you know, because you'll get some people going into hospital with a beard, and they've got that from taking, you know, testosterone and what have you, and one of them was pregnant. So now they brought out a rule that even people with beards and big muscles, you know, they've got to ask them if they're pregnant, just in case, which is absurd. But the world has gone completely mad, and it's going to get worse. You know?
It is crazy. So what's next? What's next in Revelations? Because I mean, we have issues with, don't we, where people just die, don't we, in Revelations, don't we? You know, people are literally taken to heaven, aren't they? Or
well, basically, if you're still around here and you're a divine spark, and you know, and you're going to be taken to this sacred place, this whole intermediate place, then as we are holograms, projected from your soul on the outskirts of this matrix, the projection will stop and you'll just disappear, and then, you know, you'll be taken to this one of the many mansions for 1,000 years, which in real time is a day. You know, Mary Magdalene said to Christ, you know, I mean, there's a huge book on that. It's nearly as big as the Bible itself, you know, where all the disciples are talking to Christ after he's resurrected and asking him all sorts of questions. Well, it's clear that the main disciple was Mary Magdalene, not the other. She was the one that was entrusted with lots of sacred knowledge, but she asked Christ about time, and he said, you know, one day in the pleroma is 1,000 years on Earth. And that's because we're in a black hole, effectively, where time has stopped relative to people outside. So we can live 1,000 years, and they've only lived a day. And that's how the construct of time works. You know, but as you move out of the black hole to the etheric realm, then the constraints are not so much. You know, and you can navigate through time, just like you get in your car and move through space. You just can't move through time here, apart from into the future. You know. So what was the question again, Aaron? What would you ask?
So, well, I've kind of slipped on that, but my mind has now moved to the fact that we're talking about soul being the projection, like you're saying, so people dying, so that projection's cut. So isn't the soul, though, still part of the matrix? Isn't it? We've got spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah, well, the soul's made out of 3 types of material. It's made out of the divine essence from the pleroma,
Okay.
And that divine essence of the soul was that which was stolen by the demiurge from his mother Sophia. You know, that's why they said blow into the bodies of the humans they created, which weren't moving, to animate them, which they did, and that's how it worked. But the soul's made out of that material. It's made out of the finer material of the matrix and a combination of the two. So all the stuff that's not divine from the pleroma, all that has to be stripped out before we can leave.
Okay,
that's why we have to go to this place for 1,000 years. It sounds a long time, doesn't it? But bring it on. I can't wait to go there. And we are probably, at least 10 times more intelligent than what we are now, because we're so dumbed down. We're creative beings. People say, "Oh, don't be so arrogant," but we're just dumbed down. So it's but there is a horror show that's coming along, and we have to navigate our way through it. I know.
Do you think that Sophia herself is on the rise, though, in terms of bringing awareness back? Is she waking up in that respect? Because maybe that's what the divine sparks are for a reason why we are becoming more aware of this reality and the matrix that we're in.
Well, she can't return to the pleroma until she's rectified her mistake. So that's in the Nag Hammadi text. And to do that, she has to get back the energy, the divine essence that was stolen from her by the demiurge, which is contained in the souls. So, the demiurge hasn't, basically, Sophia had the energy,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was stolen by the demiurge, who then used that energy. When he blew into the humans, he lost it all. So he was then powerless, and he couldn't get it back from us directly. So they had to manipulate us to get a source of energy. So when all this energy goes back to Sophia, then she can return to the pleroma. So that energy will be going back. When we entered this realm, when we entered this matrix, we didn't have a soul. We were divine sparks. We were, self-sufficient, whatever. But the souls were presumably some kind of energy body to gather experiences or whatever, But we picked the avatars because we could. So there are avatars. Like we have the soul, which was the energy of that came ultimately from Sophia. But we had our own divine spark as well, and the meat suit is just the prison that's holding it all together.
Could it be a reason why? Sorry, Lawrence. Could it be a reason why people suffer? Is because Sophia needs to rectify her, what went wrong there. So is that a reason? Is all the lessons that we seem to be going through and the pain and the suffering part of Sophia's waking? So we're in this dream that we're living in her dream, in effect. So all the crap that we're dealing with is part of her recognition, if you like, of what's going on, and therefore we're playing a part then in that respect in her waking.
Well, we are, yeah. I mean, I don't think we came here to learn anything, although has been quite an experience, hasn't it? I mean, you certainly won't want to come back. Well, some people might actually want to come back if it was in a controlled situation, but nobody has, have they? Who's come back to tell us about the real world? Nobody, So all we've got are, they are. It says, I forget what it says in the Bible, but it says, "Many are called, but few are chosen." Yeah, so people are woke up, and it's up to them to choose what they do with that awakening. They can just ignore it, carry on doing what they're doing, or try and move, and reject this world as best they can, so they can leave. But most people are not going to, are they? Because this is what they know. They think this is what it is. Well, we all do to some extent. We're all governed by the needs of being human. We think, but we're not. It's not us. But as things get worse, and they will, then the move over to spirituality will become stronger. And we may well get we may get an IQ boost. We may get more intelligent to help us make good decisions because we need it. But it's going to be survival. It is going to be the Hunger Games. We have to go and hide in the mountains. Well, Gordon Bennett, it's basically saying, start off with a truck, carry a truck with all your belongings. It's ready to go at a moment's notice. So you put it all in your van or whatever, and then after that, it's whatever you can carry in a rucksack. You just head for the hills, because apparently they're going to try and hunt us down. The divine sparks.
Yeah, the thing is, they need the divine sparks, though, don't they? That's the thing. They need, because we're the power source.
They are. So yeah, they don't want to kill the divine sparks. What they want to do is wipe out the useless eaters, because there's too many. The divine sparks are the main power source for their actual own existence. All your politicians, all your world leaders, they're not divine sparks. They're dependent on us. They think they're the powerful ones. We're the powerful ones, but most people don't realise it. We could never be put in positions of power because we would do good deeds.
Do you know, Lawrence, if all the divine sparks were awakened at once and all realised who they were, and they were all combined and were able to come together, I mean, can you imagine what could possibly be created at that point, though, if everyone was completely aware of who they truly are and they remembered fully who they were?
They would, but you wouldn't want them all in the same place, because they would come around us all up. They'll say, "Well, we've got them. We'll be the sheep in the pen, so to speak." There's no way. It's best that we're all dispersed amongst the population, because they can't tell by looking at people who the divine sparks are. But I mean, some of these people, you can't tell who they are, the ones who've got the possession. Apparently, if you shine an infrared light on them, they have a triangle on their forehead.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's like the Jedi Knights, isn't it? Going into hermit mode.
Well, it is. It is. But and it's. I mean, it's an exciting time to be alive, but also quite terrifying as well, isn't it? I mean, of all the times to be alive, we're in the time where we're heading for a global dictatorship, and they're going to make life very unpleasant for us if we don't go along with their plans. Most people will, but the people that will go along, they don't want them because they're useless eaters. But they've got kill switches. So how many people are going to get? Because it talks about turning the sea into blood and stuff like that in here. So there's no water, there's no food.
You're talking about the medical intervention. And I know we talk about it a lot because you can't not do. But I was reading the other day about the change of the ages as we're moving into the Aquarian age, and the children that are being born are going to be quite special in terms of intelligence and creativity and everything else. And it would make sense to why they rushed out a medical intervention to halt the progress of procreation, to slow down the potential of special human coming through. It would make complete sense. And not only that, I was reading something else where apparently the kids that were sort of put on like Ritalin and things like that as kids growing up, they're now devoid of love as adults. They don't have that attachment, that connection to love. So that again would make sense if they can get people hooked to AI, youngsters, I mean, from this very early age and programmed and devoid of human contact. So they're just literally chatting to AI. If they're then medicated as well, without that love, they may never realize they're a divine spark.
Well, possibly, yeah.
All that trickery is yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, there are people amongst us that, in terms of the Matrix, they're relatively immortal in the world. I don't know when you get a chance, go and look at this Count Saint Germain. Who's lived around for thousands of years. He might have been Sir Francis Bacon and other people, but he amazed people. You see in some of the old books, and you know, he made huge diamonds and he turned lead into gold and all sorts of stuff. And apparently he's around now, and he's apparently the sixth ray. You know,
that's right. Yes, I read that.
Every 2,000 years, the Earth passes into the vibration into one of the 7 rays of dark light under a 14,000 year cycle. You know, the 6th one was when the revelation was the ray of Elohim Farshchum, you know. But I think the current one, the 7th ray, is Saint Germain, who was, you know, he could do all sorts of tricks and didn't age because he was having dinner with these aristocrats over in Vienna or somewhere, and he knew the woman. He'd been a lover of this woman like 50 years ago, but he looked exactly the same, and she couldn't believe it. And you can read the stories of it if you go and dig it out. There's quite a few YouTubes on it, and I was actually looking into that myself, but something told me not to do it, and that's this book of Aquarius where you make the Philosopher's Stone, and if you make that, you know, it restores all the telomeres of your DNA to perfection, and you know. There's a red stone, and a white stone, and you can do healing miracles. But you know, on second thoughts, who'd want to be immortal on this earth, because it's going to end anyway? Yeah, you'd be trapped here for an absolute eternity.
That Saint Germain story reminds me a little like Highlander. Remember the film Highlander?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And
just living through
there is magic
ages,
going on it. There's magic, because in that book of Aquarius, it was telling for whatever reason, telling me the story about these crabs that they took out of the sea, and then they put them in water where all the calcium had been removed. But these crabs still shed the shell and built a new shell, despite there being no calcium. But the shells are made of calcium, so they actually alchemize this stuff out of whatever. It's like you get these buddleia trees growing out of a brick wall. You know, there's no nutrients there. And it's like the stuff that I make, the sea buckthorn, which is the most nutritious fruit on earth. It grows in pure sand on the coast up near Birkdale Golf Course. You know, there's huge amounts of it there. But it grows out. So plants must be able to make things out of thin air, alchemizing. It is kind of magic. You know, you put a plant in the soil, and this huge plant will just come out of nowhere, you know, but the nutrients in the soil didn't produce the plant. It's just come from somewhere else, from the ether, whatever.
Yeah.
So everything that's hidden now will become visible. So that's when you're going to be seeing the aliens, the evil aliens, and then you're going to be seeing the saviours. Because this is a duality of the good and the evil, and the lower part, the lower vibration of the bad people, the bad spirits, and the higher part of the pseudo good. They're not really good. They're better than the others, but they want to appear that they're the good people. You know. There we are. No man shall buy or sell unless he has them all, so that nobody be able to make any transaction. This is number 17. If they do not possess the implanted chip which is introduced in the organism with a puncture, scratch, or engraving of the skin. So that's it. You know, the beast will present itself in the form of a human to mislead even the elect ones. It will be called the Antichrist by the faithful ones and the Saviour by the deluded. So, you know, most people will see the Antichrist as a good guy, and we'll see him as a bad guy. You know.
It is definitely fascinating times.
And then we're going to have, you know, the things that are appearing in the sky, you know, which people think are holograms, but they're not. They're real. But they want us to think that. That's why they plant these stories and make, you know, they make backstories up for all sorts of people, you know, and make, you know, they're effectively, they make the people involved, they may, you know, they may well be genuine, but they've been used to fulfill a purpose, which is what most people think that this thing, when we see all the things in the sky, what's it called now? I can't remember.
Project Bluebeam.
Project Bluebeam. Yeah, people think that it's holograms, but it's not. It'll be real. But because it's outside the control of the controllers of this Earth, yeah, they've took control of it, with a cover story. So they've made up the cover story so that people don't panic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy I bought the book. I bought a couple and give them away at the New Horizons. The book's only like about 20 pages long. It wasn't some huge book, but he was telling the story in that about how this is going to be. But if I see something in the sky, yeah, it's going to be real. But Jesus won't be appearing in the sky, contrary to what people. Jesus ain't coming down here. He's not. The second coming is to the people who've been retrieved from the Matrix, so to speak. He says we will be with him for 1,000 years. Well, presumably he's going to be debriefing us and helping us to get rid of all the, because our souls have had countless lives here, and all the shit that's in there is going to be removed, purified before we can go home. We can't be taking all this negativity, all this negativity back with us. We need to be pure again, as we came in.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, what is the 144,000 in Revelations? Is that where that is?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, there we go. 144,000. Yeah. This is Revelation 7:4, the 144,000. Whether we're the 144,000, I don't know. But I'm presuming the 144,000 must be the divine sparks. Must they not?
So do you think that's a number? I always presumed it'd be like a frequency rather than the amount of people.
It could be. Well, it talks about tribes, doesn't it? There we go. Yeah, just bear with me a second.
That's okay.
There we go. Yeah, Revelation 7. It says, after this is there's going to be 144,000 people sealed, so to speak. So basically, they will probably be sealed with some kind of mark, not the mark of the beast, some other mark, for removal. To be taken out. It's the tribes of Israel. It's saying here, tribes of Judah, Reuben, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Simeon, Issue. So I would imagine that if there is only 144 the thousand divine sparks, then we're very few and far between, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't think it's that number.
There we are. We're not. It could be more,
yeah,
but there's a finite number of divine sparks. The number that came originally, that's it, and the same with the souls. That's it. There's a finite number of souls which are recirculated and reincarnated and so on and so forth. When a baby's born, it's not a new soul. It's just one that's been recycled. When children are born. So, when you say, some of highly intelligent children will be coming along, well, it's a bit late at the moment because they're only going to be like 4 or 5 years old before it all ends. So maybe it's not really a good time for anybody to be bringing children into the world. I mean, I've got people who are truthers, and they're having kids, and I'm thinking, do you know what's going on? Why would you want to bring kids into this world there where, you might not even be able to feed them? That's the reality. Because we know it's going. We know this is all going to happen. It's all, it's all, a bit long, a bit further down the conveyor belt. Before you know it, shit. There's no food in the shops. And what we're doing? Have you got any? What have you got stored in your cellar? Oh, should we share it out? Because that's where it's going to be, isn't it? people will have to start sharing and stuff. And then you find, well, oh, right. You know, I find myself out on an island that's, you know, good for growing. And I was helping this guy. And this guy's like an 80. He's been taking all these rocks off me because he builds walls for people. You know, I took an old 200-year garage down, and he's took about 25, 30 ton of rock off me, and he builds rocks. And I'm chatting to him, and he's got all this land. He's got acres of land where he grows food and stuff. And I think, oh right, you know, come the doomsday, you know, this guy's my friend now. He feels indebted to me. He might help me out. Well, that's what you think. And I gave him some seed buckthorn. So he said, you want to start growing some of these, you know, on your land. But that it's like, because where we are now, it's a real community. Apart from one neighbour, everybody gets on with each other and helps each other out. It's a really good community. It's, you know,
that's good.
It's weird, and you find yourself, well, how did I end up on top of a big hill on Anglesey? How did I end up here? You know, and why am I better off now when I've got, you know, got less money coming in, but I've got less debts? It's weird, isn't it? You know, it's like somebody is manipulating the circumstances of your life. So I moved from Southport, which wasn't happy living there because there's loads of nutters. We've had that event, whether it was real or not. You know, the event that happened last year. Whatever went on, you know, but there was people robbing shops just down the road from where I used to live. You know, the whole place is built on sand, you know.
I know.
You know, you think about mud floods, you wouldn't want to be on a house built on sand, would you?
Not really.
You get a load of water in that, this bloody thing's going to sink. You're in Lancashire, aren't you? Is your house built on sand?
I hope not.
You know, you want to be living somewhere built on rock. You know, where I am, everything's built. You go down 2 feet in Southport, and it's clean white sand. You go down 2 feet here, and it's solid rock everywhere.
Yeah,
which is weird. I find that really weird. You know, it's like I've been protected in some way.
Well, you probably are. Do you think we're in the Great Tribulation right now? Because that's in Revelation, isn't it? There's 7 years, 7 years or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, obviously with Trump, you know, the Trump thing. Trump is supposedly Elijah, and you know, 3.5 years into his presidency, then you know, he's going to be handing over to the Antichrist, as are all our leaders, you know, and then the Antichrist is in. And well, lo and behold, all these guys that are in all these hotels, they're going to become his world army to rule with a rod of iron, you know, and God knows what they're going to enforce upon us. You know,
the thing is, though,
about, does he?
Lawrence, the thing is, we saw in 2020, they didn't need to rule with a rod of iron. They just ruled with a psychology. People just need to be put in fear like they were, and they'll do as they're told, won't they?
Well, they did, but they didn't get the divine sparks, did they? You know.
No, true.
I think that
true.
I don't know what that was. Maybe it was a dummy run, you know, for what's to come. You know, to get people used to, you know, following orders and standing 6 feet apart, and you walk around the supermarket and you follow the arrows. And woe betide anybody who goes back the other way because they forgot to get a packet of rice, as my missus did. And, you know, or me having a stand-up row with a nurse about not wearing a mask, you know, in the local post office, you know, because that was just beyond, you know, you'd see them all down the street with their trolleys waiting to go in the supermarket, queuing up. Oh, they had lights. Well, here in Wales, they've still got all the signs outside, you know, about COVID. On signs outside the schools, but it was just, and then you'd go into the local spa, and they'd have 24-hour television of the BBC, you know, putting out how many casualties he had that day, who died of the you know what. It was like, you know, it was like we're in a totally different reality, wasn't it?
Oh God, yeah.
And then, of course, you got your pub. You know, people were going down your pub, and I was talking to people. And this guy said he split up with his missus because he had the you know what, and he wouldn't have it, and she had it, and they went their own separate ways. you know. But
we
that's
saw
happened to a
it a
lot.
lot. Yeah, we saw it a lot. A lot of families splitting up and breaking up at that point. It was a real soul test at that point.
You know. But most people, you know, they revert to type most of the time. That's how we are, you know. And we need to sort of start making some, you know, forward plans as to what we're going to do and be prepared to do whatever's needed.
Does Revelations give any does Revelations give any hints on what kind of preparations people should be doing? Is there any guidance in that book?
It says, "Don't go back into your house to get your clothes. Just get the hell out of there." It does. I can tell you that. Where does it say? No, it does. It says, "Don't hang about." There we go. Behold, I am coming like a thief. So this is Jesus. He's coming to take back the divine sparks, effectively. In the midst of the feast of Armageddon. Blessed he who stays awake and keeps his garments. Well, his garments are his higher self, higher mental body, so he doesn't walk naked. So when he was talking about Adam and Eve being ashamed of being naked, it wasn't the physical body that was naked. It was the fact that they've been spiritually lobotomized into the two. Nothing to do with the nakedness, which most people think. But know this: if the master of the house, and that's the demiurge, had known what hour the thief, which is Jesus, comes back to remove the keys of creation, he would have come and he would have kept watch and not allowed his house to be broken into. So yeah, it can happen at any time. But yeah, so Jesus is saying in Luke, he says, "I came to set fire on the earth, and I wish it was already kindled." He said, "I will overturn this house," meaning earth, "and no one will be able to rebuild it." So yeah, he does go into saying, you know, at the time you need to get the hell out of it. Don't go packing a suitcase. Just carry the minimum of stuff and get the hell out of there. There we go.
It's a very long time since I read Revelations. I mean, I must have been a child when I read it.
Well, you can. It's on an ebook. You can go on YouTube and it's about just over an hour and 10 minutes. So you can listen. You know, you'll get different, slightly different ones of it, but they're all basically telling you the same thing. So we need to watch out for these men with scorpions, half men, half scorpions, when they open the keys to the abyss. And all these evil people come out, all these evil creatures, you know. Armageddon, yeah. There we go. That's it. It says Matthew 14. So some of Revelations in the other parts. Matthew 14. It says, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Let those who are in the Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days." So it's not a good time to be having babies. "And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be such great tribulation, such has not been seen since the beginning of the world until this time, nor shall ever be." So yeah, you know, the gatekeeper of the abyss, the Antichrist, will free them from their sunless holes, and so, like obedient bloodhounds, by wreaking havoc, they can lead men into the worst ambush creation has ever known. And this is like, you've got these things called the chupacabra. Have you heard of the chupacabra? This is the being that could easily be called a materialized bogey, which is related with the strange animal mutations in Central America. You know, where all these cattle were being mutilated, but it was done with surgical precision and stuff like that. These, you know, there's all sorts going on. All these animal mutations and human abductions. This is all preparing for the 5D. You know, because these bodies that we have now can't survive. They have to be hybridized to survive in 5D. You know, and they need obviously food for it, which is all your crop circles. They weren't sending messages. That was just a red herring to, you know, make people think that some aliens were sending us some divine message. You know, they were collecting energy as food, and the same with the organs of cattle and stuff like that, because and they were collecting it for themselves as well, because underground in America there's huge colonies of these greys, and they have a defective digestive system, and so they absorb food through the skin. They just rub enzymes and nutrients into the skin, and it gets absorbed.
There was a crop circle last week, wasn't there, or the other day? A new one down south.
Yeah, gathering stuff.
Yeah,
well, some of these places are not very energetic. You know, people go to Stonehenge, but apparently that's not very energetic at all. The energetic one is apparently over at Glastonbury.
Glastonbury, yeah.
For some reason, you know, a lot of the so-called good people live there. It's like some kind of pilgrimage to go and live in Glastonbury. That's probably why they have the pop festival there. There must be a good ambience there, good energy or whatever.
Well, without doubt, because that's why he has the pyramid stage, and it'll be harvest. They'll be harvesting energy there, won't they?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, from all the divine sparks there. Yeah, it'll be sucking them out. Yeah. You can't see it.
Oh, yeah.
We'd all be sucked out going up into the sky. You know, if you could actually see it. Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah.
There's a great power there for sure. And then they would use. You know, it becomes ritualistic though as well, doesn't it? That's the thing. Yeah. So during the crazy period, you had the Kaiser chiefs, who I now call the Pfizer chiefs, and they were asking the crowd, "What injection have you had? Which one have you had? This have you had that, and whatever." And it's all energy harvesting.
Yeah, and it's not just the bad energy. People just think about it. It's that these entities thrive on negative energy, but it's a duality. They need the good energy as well. You know, they need the good and the negative, positive and negative energy. So you know, they're going to get both. They need both sorts. So yeah, it's all happening, mate. You know, you just got to keep your finger on the pulse and see what's happening next, and go with your instincts, whatever it tells you to do. You know, even if it sounds crazy. You know.
How does Revelations end, Lawrence? How does the book end?
How does it end? Let me tell you. Right, okay. Revelation ends. Here we go. So Revelation 18. It says, "And after these things I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having great power, authority, and the earth," which is the energy planes, the cause of matter, was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Fallen is Babylon the Great." Well, Babylon the Great is the dense matter of earth, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hateful vulture. Because at that point, all the good people are out, and all that's left are the negatives. It says time completes its cycle, and the earth, the support of matter, is thoroughly stricken because it was the dragon's nest. The snake's cut off tail will become the grave of those who choose to remain on it, entering the threshold of the second death. So these events, no matter how painful, must be stated, so that nobody can say that they were not. Okay, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not take part in her sins and receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached up to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." So while everything will appear to have ended, the holy hour of spiritual transference comes for those who have enduringly waited for redemption, because the real plagues for the world begin from then on, because promises are kept. Yeah. And so that's basically it. The sacred hour has arrived for those who have waited, and all those who have remained firm in their decision will go through the process of the first resurrection, regardless of whether they are still alive in matter or have died and are in the disintegrating energy fields. So people don't come out of their graves in the ground; they come out of the energy fields, which are sort of basically a different vibration. Then, while everything will be crumbling down, while events will succeed one another in lightning speed, because time will be near the finishing line, then the true sign of Christ will appear in the sky, which will, of course, will not be the cross. The cross is the symbol of matter, and at that time, matter will be dissolving. Those who possess spiritual nous will recognize it immediately. Others will realize it when it's too late. So there you go. It's
interesting.
It's this earth will no longer be. It has been destroyed. It's depicted. Well, it's depicted as rewinding, but whether it will or not, I very much doubt it. In the Illuminati cards, So some of them will remain in their underground caverns, hoping that it will survive whatever it is. But which is what's probably happened in the past. But this looks to be the big one. The big one of all, where it all, enough is enough. It has to end sometime.
Yeah. Do you see it happening in our lifetime then?
Oh yeah, I see it happening. 2030ish. I mean, the Mayan calendar was 2012, but that was based on, they worked that out based on the 365-day year, which shortened it. So, if you put the 360-day year in, which is what they had at the time, then it brings it out, brings it into the 2030s. But then it says in the Bible, the time was shortened, the days were shortened by some, by some intervention, obviously. So I see it's happening now. Otherwise, what's going to happen to us, right? Well, you probably live a bit longer than me. You're a bit 10 years or so younger than me. But what is going to happen? I don't fancy trying to find my way out through all the after death zones, finding my way through all the the etheric realm and the astral realm, where all the predators are there. Because apparently, you end up going through that. They strip out all the energy from you. It becomes like the equivalent of a slaughterhouse, where they strip out all the negative thoughts and all the positive thoughts that are trapped within your soul before it's recycled again. And that's documented in the book of Mary Magdalene. Tells you, what happens there and what you're supposed to do to try and get out. It's a big long read to get through it. So there's like gatekeepers in the different levels to get through it. So apparently you've got to go down to the lowest realm first and then work your way up. If you get all the way up to the top, you might get out. Or you might find yourself in nirvana, which is not where you want to be. But nirvana is the heaven of the matrix.
Yeah, well, it's just still part of the matrix, though, isn't it? That's the problem.
It is, mate. Yeah. See, we come here knowing absolutely nothing, And what can we go off? We can go off old books that are written and what other people tell you, or what your instincts tell you. What else can you go off? Nobody come back. There's nobody come back from the pleroma saying, well, I was down there living all these lives like you. I decided to come back to tell you, how I got out. And nobody has, have they? Apart from Jesus. But he had to tell it you all in code because they knew it wouldn't be allowed to stand. That's why it was all parables, wasn't it? Written in code, but not, the wheat and the tares and stuff like that. It wasn't talking about wheat. It was talking about, the divine sparks and the others, the evil people who were always in charge. And they're all amongst us. So we've come here in ignorance, because of the memory wipe, and we haven't got a clue as to how to lead. So it's going to need some divine intervention to help us. Initially, the divine intervention has woken us up. It's staged your life events so that you're in the position that you're in now. And you need to sort of have faith that, as the time comes nearer, you may get some crazy idea that you're just going to go and do this and you're going to go and live there or wherever because your instincts tell you to do it. You just do it.
I think this is why it's so important to avoid these distractions as best as possible, to get in that place of remembrance of who we truly are, because otherwise we're going to miss the signs potentially, because we're going to be too distracted, too stressed or whatever. Because it is tricky. It's we're in a very tricky realm, aren't we?
Well, we are. The so-called remembrance is happening because we don't actually learn anything. People say you learn this, you don't. All you're doing is remembering what you've known from your many other lives. So I know stuff about healing products nobody told me. I just knew. And then I looked it up on the internet, and lo and behold, that works. You just know stuff, don't you? You just know what's going to happen. It's like when the old stuff happened. God, I didn't need anybody to tell me.
No, that's right.
I was talking about it before it even happened at New Horizons. I was telling them all this was coming along. I didn't know when. I didn't think it was going to come along so soon, but I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know whether it was going to be in my lifetime or not, but it's happened now. All the cogs are moving in that direction. So the climate is getting out of control now. I mean, it really is. Last year it did nothing, but it rained and rained and rained and rained. Never stopped raining, and these fields that were permanently flooded. And now this year, there's been no rain. It's just been dry. Sunshine. And the next thing you know, there'll be hosepipe pipe bands and stuff like that because they don't, and then there'll be food shortages. And obviously they want people to have all this synthetic food, which is a bit of a conundrum anyway, isn't it? Because I hate the fact that where I live, I see all these baby lambs, innocent little lambs, all playing merrily with each other, jumping up and down in the things, and then, come September, they're all loaded up in the truck, they're all terrified, and they've got their little faces sticking out of the edge of the truck, and they're taken away and they're murdered. And this is what civilized man does. They murder innocent creatures. It's an awful. This is it. It's a sick world that we live in, where we have to kill something to survive.
Yeah, there's everything suffers. There's suffering everywhere, isn't there? I mean, there is magic everywhere also, but it's so out of balance here. It's so out of balance.
It's the evils outweighing the good now, isn't it? Everything used for the matrix to survive. Good and evil have to be in perfect balance. So you do a good deed, and somebody else will do a bad deed, because that's how it's made. Don't ask me how it works like that, but it does. But now there's more evil than good, because the people who control this world, by having their consciousness taken over, they're just doing evil things, aren't they? They're not doing anything good for anybody. I mean, women used to retire at 60, and now it's 67 going up. People ain't going to be getting bloody pensions in the future. If this place is still here, it's not going to happen. So, I remember when I was growing up, my mother didn't work. My dad was only a fireman. He did all the part-time jobs to make ends meet and what have you. But now you can't live on one income. If you've got and he had a mortgage as well. If you're let's say you were I don't know, let's say you're a fireman now, or a policeman. You've got one income. You can't afford to have a family and a house and a mortgage and a car and have holidays and everything. It just doesn't happen, does it? You need two people, and you're still going to struggle.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because everybody's been priced out of the market. The only people who get property now are those who inherit it. You know, and usually they won't, because it's like my mother's in a care home, and the house will be sold, you know, to pay for her fees, because she's been in there 4 years, and the cost is about £50,000 a year. So, you know, that's like 200,000 quid's got to go to pay the care fees. So people don't inherit anything these days. Same with their missus. You know, her dad died, but the house was sold to pay all the care fees. This is how it goes. You know, it's you know, we're taxed every which way down the road. If you worked it out, you know, I mean, you pay tax on everything that you buy. You're taxed on your income, and you're taxed when you die. Every which way you're taxed, aren't you? You know. And so
unless you sell your soul, Lawrence.
Well, if you sell your soul, yeah, then you should have good things while you're here. But I don't think they can't buy the souls of the divine sparks, because they wouldn't do it. They can only buy the souls of those who've just got a soul and not a divine spark. They sell out, you know, because they can. You know, and they get great, you know, and they have their, you know, you've got your Pink Floyds, and they've got their fantastic £10 million motor car collections, and they can play great music, but they haven't got a future.
But it's all irrelevant, isn't it? At the end of it all, it's all irrelevant. That material stuff's just irrelevant.
And you've got that picture behind you of the guy out the doors, you know, and his dad was a high-ranking military man, wasn't he?
He was.
And he died at 27. Whatever
allegedly. Jim Morrison.
Allegedly. Yeah, he probably became somebody else, And and how did he do it? He just became a musician out of nowhere, if you look at the story. You know, well, that doesn't happen, does it, normally? All these so-called pop stars, you know, a lot of them come from high-ranking families, don't they? You know, it's
absolutely.
all contrived.
Yeah, his dad was an admiral.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a story, isn't it? At the end of the day, like you said before, it's an act. They're all actors.
Yeah, I know.
And if anybody could just end his story at 27 and then move on to another act, it was Jim Morrison.
Well, yeah, then you got Jimi Hendrix, who became that guy in the Shawshank Redemption, whatever his name is. Who was the black guy in Shawshank? Apparently they're one and the same. What's his name? Red out of the Shawshank, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all just take on other roles, you know, because they're not going to waste the NASA, are they? You know, these are good actors. You know, Jimi Hendrix was a good actor, played a good guitar player, didn't he? You know, then becomes something else. Yeah, but some do it for their entire life, but some switch roles part way through. You know, and
they keep us nice and distracted.
Because they probably hate it. They probably hate their lives. They probably hate who they are. Because imagine being really famous and your life's not your own, and you go out for a meal somewhere, and all these people start minding you. Think, God, I wish I wasn't famous. Go away, leave me alone. You can't go anywhere. You get mobbed.
I struggle, Lawrence, just doing work for other people where I feel my life isn't my own for that period of time of doing work for someone, you know. So being famous would be horrendous. It'd be awful.
Yeah, and all these famous people having to be, for their entire life, usually, having to pretend to be the opposite sex to that they were born. What a fucking... No wonder that all these people kill themselves and take drugs and what have you. Well, you would, wouldn't you? You think, oh, fucking hell. You know, what's going on? And it must be upon fear of death. None of them ever admit it, do they? Apart from Cher, when she said, "Yeah," she said, "No, I am a rich man." You know, but they say it in a joking way, so people don't take them seriously. But they put it out there. Some of them do, don't they? You know, and it's like, have you seen the pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger now? You know. Have you seen the pictures of it now to what it was? Oh, I could send it to you. You won't believe it. Yeah.
No.
the guy's just a flabby mess because these people revert to type. They can't keep on taking the testosterone all their life because it totally destroys people. You know,
what a world, eh?
Like your guy, who's that guy? Joe Rogan. You know, he's one of them as well. You know, and you can tell him that's why he's got all these tattoos on his hands because he has to take a lot of testosterone, and the skin gets discoloured, and you get different coloured hands if you're taking a lot of testosterone. So that's why all his hands are covered in fucking tattoos to disguise it.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It is. Yeah. So you just think, oh, he's got a lot of tattoos on their hands. Yeah. Who's they're having to take the testosterone. So.
Not me. But not me. I'm all right.
But you can't talk about it because it's hate crime. You know, you can't. In today's world, telling the truth is a criminal act. You know, that's how it is. So you know, we may get sanctioned for saying something.
As always.
you know, well, you know, it depends if they want it out there. You know, but you know, we're not getting millions of views on, so don't worry about it. You know, get a few hundred views, and nobody's gonna be worried about what we're saying because they probably think we're crackpots anyway. True so we get away with it. You know, we can get away with saying our true opinion. But if you're famous and you give out the truth, oh no, you can't do that because millions of people can be influenced by what you say. You know, they'll even go and buy the shitty perfume that you recommend.
So what's next on your agenda, Lawrence? What have you got coming up? Have you got anything? Because I know you did some talks recently, didn't you? You did a New Horizons talk. Have you got anything lined up, or are you working on anything at the moment?
Not really. I'm going up to get some sea buckthorn up at the northwest in September, so I can make some chutney. You know, freezing it and then making my famous chutney. Well, it's not famous, but it should be. You know. Yeah. No, I'm not. No, I might start stocking up on a bit of food. You know, things. You know, because I can. But I don't know. It's all. People start sending you stuff that's on the news, and you think, yeah, I know, but it's all made up shit.
Yeah,
the news is all made up shit. Have you seen this on the news? It's all made up. All these fucking this, that, and the other. And they said, oh, isn't it terrible what's happened there? Well, no, because it didn't happen. You know, well, so, occasionally it might happen, but you know, obviously the so-called asylum seekers, they are happening. They're coming over here. Apparently, what happens when they come over in the boats? They take the boats back over to France so they can send another load over. Apparently.
Yeah,
but that is frightening because let's say that well, obviously, you know, if you were materialistic and if they moved into a hotel which was just down the road from you, it's going to devalue your home, isn't it? You know, and you'd be scared. You wouldn't be letting your kids go out, would you? If you got young kids, you wouldn't, because these people they haven't really got any scruples, I don't think, about what they do, and that's why they've been brought in. They're of a certain mindset, you know, and they've got them in all communities. Well, not where we are because I'm very remote, but you know, in all the towns, they've got a hotel at least, you know, and of course normal people can't go in. They've got their own security guards to stop people going in. God knows what they're doing all day. I mean, what are they doing? Some of them have been here for years and years already, haven't they? What on earth are they doing? They're not being sent back, are they? I don't know, but yeah, there's a lot of people revolted against it, especially in Ireland. And of course,
there is,
they get everything paid for. They get all the healthcare. That's worth having anyway. You get their food and their lodgings, and they get, you know, whatever. They get a credit card with X amount per week to go and spend on what they want. They don't have to go out to work. They don't have to go and seek a job. Well, you know, they get put up in these, some of them like 3-4 star hotels, and yet we've still got people sleeping under cardboard boxes in the town centres, haven't we? We don't do anything for our own people.
Yeah,
it's
totally absurd, upside down. Yeah.
It's beyond belief that this is happening. You know,
but people this is the realm we're in, isn't it? This is the realm that we're in.
It's becoming a lot more uncaring realm. You know, people are going to be caring a lot less than they did. You know, people are going to be getting very fed up and pissed off with life, with what's going on. You know, I mean, look at all these bloody electric cars. I've started posting them on my page. You know, people have got electric car parked side out of their house, and they get up in the morning and their house is burnt down. Or if you go and park, you go shopping and you park in a car park at Asda or somewhere, you park an extra electric car, you're taking a chance, because by the time you came back, the old once one goes, everything that's parked next to them, the bloody old lot go up, don't they?
Well,
we're compulsory.
We're very unfortunate. Our house is right next to a petrol station, and they've got 2 electric charging points, right? So, and these guys that come with their electric cars and they start charging the cars, they sat there for like 2 hours charging the car with the music full blast while we're trying to get sleep. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is, but this is supposed to be progress, isn't it? And it's saving the planet, and you know.
But this is why everything's going on. This is why everything's going on in the Ukraine and Russia's, because the minerals are there for the batteries, aren't they?
Something going on, yeah. It's just a cover story. The war's all made up. You know.
Yeah, it's just there's all sorts going on over there, unfortunately, isn't there? There's all sorts going on, but I know that the minerals out there.
It's like the Falklands War. You know, that was a cover story to recover the black goo, apparently.
Oh, really?
You know,
that's interesting.
If you've never read the stories about that, there's one on the plate. I think it was called Bases, and apparently all the British soldiers who went over there to get the black goo, most of them committed suicide, and then the black goo was taken to an electronics Ferranti, I think it was, and all the scientists there committed suicide. One guy got in his car, tied his head round a noose to something, and decapitated himself, because the black goo drove people insane, took over their minds. And they reckon this black goo may have taken over the minds of politicians and people.
Well, they're certainly out of their minds.
You listen to that guy who was still alive, and what happened to him. I'll find it and send it if he's still there.
Max Spears.
A very good story. No, they bumped him off. No, he wasn't involved with the black goo. But this guy was telling the story, you know, and you know, he wasn't very well at all. You know, all his friends had died. You know, it turned people. Basically, it drew all the spirit out of people, and they became very cold and you know, it's weird, really weird.
It's frightening, isn't it? It's frightening. Yeah. Makes you wonder again about the medical intervention.
Well, I know, because these people who had the so-called medical intervention, they said all the spirit was drained from them. You know, they lost their soul or something. Apparently, all the other stuff. You know,
there's a lot of stories about it. Yeah,
I'll tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be cyber security. Yeah, cyber security, where you know people lose their money, and the only way they can be secure of the money is the chip, and the money's secure.
Oh, it's
digital ID.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's it. Cyber security, because they're talking about cyber attacks. So they've already done it with the co-op. You know, well, there's no fruit and veg. Oh, we got a cyber attack. Yeah. So there's no potatoes today, no apples, no pears, no lettuce. You know, just tins. Whatever. But you know, and we know there's no cyber attacks. I mean, it's bollocks, isn't it? You know, it's all part of the agenda, but it's all these little incremental ones. They'll do one here, one there, you know, and then they'll do a great big one where they take everything down, you know, and then they take all the banks down, you know, you can't get your money out, and then they bring out, oh, well, we're going to have to go for this central bank digital currency, you know, to keep it safe. We're going to put it on this because we don't, you know, somebody can steal your money. You could go online and steal your money online, you know, if it's not on your chip. On your chip, they can't touch it, you know, because they can't be removed from your body. So please queue up here for the biochip.
Well, this all links with it all links with the migrant thing, though, Lawrence, because people will beg for digital ID. You know, it'll be the only answer to solve any kind of issues if there's, you know, communities under threat and stuff by any migrant situation. People will be going, Mr. Government, you need to save me now. So, well, the only answer is digital ID and a chip.
I know, and they grind you down with all the bloody passwords. So now I don't know whether it's come round to you yet, but on Facebook, if you want to look at your messages now, you have to put in, it's a 6-number digit to actually.
I get it. Yeah.
You've got to have it on Facebook. So they've rolled it out. I got it the other week. Couldn't open the messages unless I came up with a code that I had to then remember. Well, with all the other millions of passwords and usernames, and you think, every day, you know, because everything you do is online. You need a username. What's my username? I can't remember. I've forgotten it. You know, what's my password? You know, prove you're not a robot. All this bollocks. You know, and you get all through all this stuff. Try again later. You've had 3 attempts. Yeah, you can't get your money out. You can't buy this. Come back later and try again. It's bollocks, isn't it?
It is.
And then the banks are now saying, we need to know what you're spending your money on. And if you don't tell us, we'll send you to prison. Apparently in Spain, that's what's happening. Or you can have a big fine if you don't tell us what you're spending the money on. Because it's their money now, isn't it?
Utter nonsense. Yeah.
All
Lawrence,
right,
it's been a pleasure again, mate.
Onwards and upwards.
You look after yourself best you can. We'll keep walking through Armageddon.